This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, the Milwaukee Bucks have won 4 straight. They sit 24-17 on the year. That's good for 4th in the Eastern Conference. They'll take on the Pelicans tomorrow night in New Orleans. Moving to Wisconsin basketball, they'll finish out their West Coast road trip. Saturday, they beat USC. Tonight, they'll take on UCLA. Now, with that win over USC and last week's Ohio State's victory, the Badgers moved up to number 18 in the new AP Top 25. Here's more from head coach Greg Gard on his team.
The credit goes to my staff, too, of how very intentional how we put this team together in today's era of portal and the transient nature, that we were very selective and intentional on how we put the team together, that have depth across the board at each spot and not have too much of something and not enough of another. So you're able to, you get enough depth and versatility that you can withstand. We're not dependent on one specific guy or two specific guys in that case. So I think, and then they've grown, and that's a credit to the players and our staff. They've grown and gotten better. We're still trending upward, which we need to continue to do.
Tip off against UCLA tonight is at 8:30.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Rural Mutual is the #1 farm insurer in Wisconsin for a good reason. As a company founded by farmers, they understand the ag industry and its challenges. Local agents offer farm families the best advice and personalized coverage. Visit ruralmutual.com.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
The Green Bay Packers have a defensive line coach vacancy, and today they interviewed Casey Rogers, a former NFL coordinator who was previously with the Buccaneers. For the Wisconsin Sports Zone Network, I'm Ebo.
As of this moment in time, Paul Feinbaum, does the Big Ten own college football?
The answer, Greeny, is yes. The Big Ten at the moment owns college football, and there's no way you can say it doesn't. When you go back to back, that's generational. In Ohio State's case, they beat 2 SEC schools along the way. And there's an old saying that was emanated in 1828 when Andrew Jackson was elected president. A senator from New York said, "To the victor belongs the spoils." And that's exactly where the Big Ten is this morning. It's an uncomfortable feeling for the SEC, which has owned the sport, but it's a reality this morning.
We grew, we built, we responded to tough times. And man, isn't that what life's all about? They're going to go down in Ohio State history. One of the greatest teams to ever play at Ohio State. Ohio State may not be for everybody, but it's for these guys, and I'm really proud.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Well, the 2024-2025 college football season coming to an end last night. And just before the show started, I got a question, I think, from Tyler in Massachusetts, the Monday mailbag last night. He asked me, in the spirit of all the TikTok drama, he's like, what app can't you live without? And this isn't really an app, but 2 websites I use a ton. Time Calculator, if you just Google Time Calculator, it's really nice to be able to take, like, I want to add 8 minutes and 32 seconds and 25 minutes and 18 seconds, because radio, like if I'm editing segments together and for an hour of content, let's say it needs to add up to a certain time, like that's because adding minutes and seconds, it's difficult for my stupid brain. So I use that a lot. Also an interesting website or something that's kind of handy, a days calculator, right? So you can put in like August 20th to June 17th. How many days is that, right? And I'm sure there's a way math people are like, that's not that hard. Okay, but for me, it is. And I put in the start of the 2024-2025 college football season to the end. And it began on August 24th, 2024, and ended last night on January 20th. 149 days, or 4 months, 27 days. And a lot of people were big to-do on Twitter yesterday talking about how this championship game needs to happen on New Year's Day, and the season's way too long. Okay, what do you want? We've got more college football playoff games, more big-time matchups. Oh, the season takes too long. Okay. Well, no one's ever happy. And I don't really care how long the season takes. I was saying that this is fine, mostly because Peter Bukowski was whining about how the season's too long, and I like arguing with Peter on Twitter. I don't really care one way or another. I just like a reason to jump in Peter's mentions. But a long season, no doubt. 149 days. And I don't know that last night was a whimper of an ending. I've seen worse national championship games. I've seen better, but I've certainly seen a lot worse. Ohio State winning over Notre Dame 34-23. I was going to be fine with either team winning. I think I was kind of cheering for Notre Dame. But as I said last night, Ohio State winning, that's a notch in the Big Ten's ledger. I like that too, as a fan of Wisconsin, as a fan of the Big Ten. So really not displeased. I really wasn't going to be that psyched if Notre Dame won either. I sometimes like cheering for Notre Dame. I'm a Catholic. All right, there's a reason to cheer for a team when my team's out of it. I want to begin with last night's national championship game tonight. This is the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. Thrilled to have you here. Thank you for listening. Always. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you're listening on the radio in Eau Claire or La Crosse or in Madison, you're streaming somewhere, appreciate it. Remember, you can also watch the live stream if that's more your thing. If you're at home and you want something to throw on the TV, my brain is wired a certain way. If I'm at home, I'm going to turn the TV on, even if it's on mute, to have something on. Happy to be on mute. I'm just happy to be on and be viewed and to have the show consumed any way possible. It's on YouTube, the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills. The same on Facebook. Like the Facebook page. I would appreciate that. If you listen to the show, you never like the Facebook page, it only takes you a second. Helps me out a little bit. Thank you for doing that. And you can watch and follow the show on Twitter as well, at Wisco Grant. I want to talk Packers, and I want to talk about some of the coaching hirings. Ben Johnson, we learned that news last night. I have some more extended thoughts now that we've had a day to kind of stew with that, and a Packers thing that I want to discuss as well. No Mike Clemens. He is resting and recuperating after a season of hard work. So more time to chat on the phones tonight. 608-321-1670 if you are interested, and you can comment on the live stream or on Twitter too, and I'll do my best to get to everyone and everything. I actually turned this game off in the third quarter last night. Is that bad? I don't think so. If it's a blowout, I'm just not going to watch. You know what I mean? If the Bucks are getting blown out or if they're blowing a team out, probably going to turn it off. If Badgers basketball is blowing a team out, those games are pretty quick. So I might stick it through to the end. If they're getting blown out, I might turn it off. If the Badgers football team is getting blown out, I will turn that off real quick. And I did a couple of times this season. If the Packers are getting blown out, I'll watch it because the Packers are just such a big deal. But I turned the game off last night in the middle of the third quarter. It seemed so over. And I think it was. I know Notre Dame put a little charge on in the third quarter. They made it interesting, I guess. This game proceeded, I think, like a lot of us thought that it might. Ohio State's just got too many weapons. They have too much firepower. And if the game, again, I said, look, if this gets up into the upper 20s, that's too much for Notre Dame. Forget the 30s or the 40s. If this game gets above 23, 24, 25 points, I just don't think Notre Dame has the weaponry, and that's how it panned out. Ohio State is just so explosive. All of a sudden, they can rattle off a play for 60 or 70 yards, and for a team like Notre Dame, that's difficult. And as I said on last night's show, they had a narrow path to victory. I've seen worse I've seen a lot worse national championship games over the years. So this game wasn't a complete and total bust, but it wasn't a classic, okay? I rolled my eyes a little bit today at some of the commentary surrounding Ohio State. I have a couple sound bites that I want to play for you. This one first from Kirk Herbstreit on ESPN last night, about 20 seconds. Listen to this.
I'm a little emotional. I'm just fired up for these guys. When I call these games, I'm incredibly objective. And I love all these Ohio State teams, but this team, because of what they went through to get to this point, you're just happy,
What they went through. Okay, here's Urban Meyer last night for Fox / the Big Ten Network.
I think it's one of the great comeback stories in college football recent history. The comeback, 4 weeks ago or a month, on November 20, end of November,
nice,
this
Urban.
team was flat. And one of the great 4-game stretches in college football history. Yeah. I can't wait. There will be a book written about that, and I know we talked about it pregame. What in the world was said in the team meeting? Because that's one of the best college football teams I've ever witnessed.
So there was all this reaction from the talking heads. I'll just say the talking heads, for lack of a better term. There was this narrative, this commentary. It's like, considering what they went through, considering what they had to endure, considering they lost to Michigan. They didn't endure a fiery bus crash. Like they lost to Michigan. And I don't doubt that losing to Michigan was brutal, but it was their own doing. They botched it. They blew it. They had a really limited Michigan team in their building and a chance to get off the schneid after losing a couple in a row to Harbaugh, who, yeah, it sucks for Ohio State fans, but man, you lose to Harbaugh. I guess there's a worse way to go. But now it's Sharon Moore, and Michigan's in year one of not really a rebuild, but they're certainly not a team they were a year ago or the year before, national title contending level teams. They blew it. Oh, it's just what this team went through. They did it to themselves. They lost the game. This coaching staff went in there with a jacked up game plan to try to be physical and run the ball. Man, you got NFL level, top 5 pick level wide receivers. They just didn't use it. So that commentary was a little grating on me. Well, what they went through, a little much, a little dramatic. But then again, it's sports. I understand we have to paint a picture with these narratives, especially when a team wins a championship. And I keep thinking about that Michigan loss, which now feels like forever ago because it was. In previous years, that loss would have been completely and totally disqualifying. That loss prevented Ohio State from playing in their conference championship game. It stuck them with 2 losses, which means you don't get into a 14 playoff unless there's just no other elite team. It would take a really weird, really funky year for a 2-loss Big Ten team that didn't even play in the conference championship game. It would take a wacky year for that team to get into a 14 playoff. So in previous years of the 4 team, that loss to Michigan wouldn't have just been this, crushing loss against a rival. It would have prevented them from getting a crack at playing for a national title. Now, this year was different. And as I've said over the last couple weeks, I think this expanded playoff has been a success. It depends on your point of view, I guess. But this expanded playoff extended grace to a couple championship-level teams that in previous years wouldn't have been allowed in the playoff. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. It's a great example. Ohio State, right? I want to read you this tweet I bookmarked. I don't even know that I agree. In fact, I'm pretty sure I don't agree with this tweet. But I think it's a point that's worth considering and a perspective that's worth considering. So Adam Kramer, he's with Golden Tea. His bio is, I love college football and make golden tea. I also podcast, no punts allowed. You might be familiar with him. He took a picture from on the field in Atlanta last night, and he tweeted the picture of the confetti, and he captioned it. Imagine showing this image to someone 1 hour after Ohio State lost to Michigan. What a sport, right? And the bookmark that I saved, the tweet that I saved, is actually a quote tweet. It was someone commenting on this tweet. It's Graham Coffey, who's a publisher, co-founder at Dog Central. Everyone's got a platform now, and I understand I'm one of those people, but still, whatever. If you want to go find the tweet, you can. So it says, Michigan's win over Ohio State should have gone down as one of the most painful losses in rivalry week history. A $20 million roster wasted, a once promising coaching tenure blown up on the launch pad. Instead, it doesn't matter at all. Congrats to everyone who ruined the best regular season in sports. I think it's a very pessimistic way to look at the expanded playoff. But I think there's an ounce of truth to that. And I've talked about this. We've had these conversations on the show over the last couple of months. Man, you lose to Michigan, that should kind of damn your season to hell, right? Well, with this expanded playoff, not so much. Conference championship games, Texas and Georgia playing for the SEC title. That should be a de facto playoff game. That should be a huge game. And instead, it felt like a little bit of a formality. Both teams are getting in. Now, winning the SEC title game is not a formality. That's a trophy, of course, but not the stakes and not the importance that we've seen in years past, right? So there's still a part of me that thinks, well, the old system was okay because is there really more than 4 teams that are worthy? I guess maybe this year's shown us, yes, there are more than 4 teams that are worthy, but the regular season, those games just meant so much more. But I think it's hard to argue that this expanded playoff wasn't a success because look at what Ohio State just did. But then again, imagine what that Michigan game would have meant with the conventional 4-team playoff. Just something to think about when you're laying in bed trying to go to sleep. Ryan Day deserves credit, right? Can we all agree on that? He, as a coach, bounced them back from that crippling loss. There were players that were pepper sprayed on the field. We were watching. We were with our families the day after Thanksgiving, and we're all watching our TV. Like, what is this? My sister and my mom, who don't care about they watch the Badgers, and yeah, they cheer for the Badgers if it's on, but they don't care about Ohio State, Michigan. We're all glued to the TV. They're like, what is this? Players are fighting. There's pepper spray. They're trying to plant a flag. Ryan Day got his team from that spot to rattling off win after win after win against elite playoff teams to winning a national title. Ryan Day deserves credit for that, right? If it were any other coach, we'd talk about, man, what a great job getting your players refocused. What a great job saying what needs to be said, coaching the way that the team needs to be coached, right? And I saw the tweets today and last night. Ooh, what about all those fans that hate Ryan Day and have wanted him fired? What are they going to say now? Those fans shouldn't get to celebrate this. And I thought about Bill when I saw those tweets because Bill doesn't like Ryan Day. Bill's an Ohio State guy, went there. Bill can't stand him. A lot of people can't. A lot of people have wanted him out. And I will defend Bill and those like Bill who have been anti-Ryan Day, even as Ohio State people. Ryan Day is 1-4 against Michigan, including losing the last 4 in a row. He won the first time, the year that he took over, he won and hadn't won since. I'm not misremembering. I'm not misreading. I have that number correct, right? 1-4, including 4 straight losses. They haven't won a Big Ten championship since 2020. At Ohio State, folks, in what world is that acceptable? In what world are Ohio State fans supposed to take that and say, well, you know, he's not perfect, but he's our guy? He'll support him? No. Ryan Day should have been under fire. Now, should he have to hire security at his home when he loses to Michigan? No. All right. But that, you know, it's why you make all the money at Ohio State, too. It's part of the gig. It's a really hard job. But to act like Ohio State fans, like this has been fine and they should just be okay with this. Right? Ohio State fans have no right to be critical. Oh, yes, they do. And last night, Ryan Day finished the job and got it done. And you know what? As someone who's pretty impartial in all of this, because I am a Wisconsin fan, but Wisconsin's not even close to on the level. What am I supposed to do? Treat Ohio State like I, as a Brewers fan, treat the Cubs, or treat Ohio State like I, as a Packers fan and owner, treat the Vikings? They're not in the same world. They're not comparable. You know what I mean? So I'm allowed to feel a little happy for Ryan Day. I can't imagine a win has felt better for any coach at any point. The relief and the happiness that he must have felt last night, I'm happy for him on a human level. And I also think there's some Big Ten angles that are worth talking about, right? I'm not acting like the Ohio State winning a national championship the year after Michigan wins a national championship, 2 in a row for the Big Ten. I'm not going to sit here and act like, well, that's the high tide that's going to lift all boats, including Wisconsin, because I'm not that naive. But I do think there are some situations around the Big Ten and some details in the current state of college football, which seems like it's trending towards 2 conferences, AFC, NFC thing, play for the title, Big Ten, SEC, whatever they're going to end up being labeled. I do think there's some reasons to be optimistic for Wisconsin. In the biggest of big pictures, I still don't know that Luke Fickell's going to be a good coach that gets this thing figured out. I don't know. But big picture, I think there's some positives for Wisconsin. We could talk about that next. I also want to talk a little bit about Ben Johnson, some thoughts after we've had a day to kind of stew with that news. But your calls, we got loaded phone lines, so you must feel strongly about this, or you must have something that you feel strongly about. I'll get to your calls, 608-321-1670 next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
We finished the season the right way, and we grew, we built, and we responded to tough times. And man, isn't that what life's all about? And these guys, learned a bunch of life lessons, but they're going to go down in Ohio State history as some of, one of the greatest teams to ever play at Ohio State. After all the things that have been said throughout the year, these guys are going to be cemented as one of the best stories in Ohio State history and one of the best football teams ever. Only 9 teams have ever done it, and 3 in the over 50 years. These guys right here. And there was a point where not a lot of people had that vision, but these guys did, and they saw it through. And Ohio State may not be for everybody, but it's for these guys, and I'm really proud of them.
That's Ryan Day after the game last night. I don't blame Ohio State people that have been critical of Ryan Day. He can't beat Michigan. They haven't won a Big Ten title since 2020. So to act like, whoa, what do Ohio State fans have to say now? Well, now they can say, congratulations, Coach Day, you finished the thing. Doesn't change the last couple of years, right? Like I'm thinking of Bill. Bill's been so critical of Ryan Day the last couple of years because he's had reason to be critical. Ohio State's had awesome rosters. They haven't been able to finish the job. This year they finished the job. So congrats. I can't imagine there's a more relieved, more happy coach in sports than Ryan Day currently. Didn't beat Michigan, but okay, winning a national title. Hopefully that'll get people off my back for a couple weeks at the very least. To your calls as promised. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, it's Tony from Texas.
Hey, Tony.
So, Ohio State, Ryan Day talking about the adversities, probably got the best roster in all of football. But, I cannot stand Michigan and Ohio State. I know they're Big Ten. They're the Blue Bloods. They're the ones that won the national titles the last couple of years. The only thing I really like about them is their uniforms. I got to give them props. Their uniforms are cool. Both
Ohio State or Michigan?
I like those,
or both?
Both of them. Both are good. And I like Ohio State's little sticker program when they put little stickers on the helmet. I like that.
I want something like that as a radio host. I want something to add to my headphones when I have a good show. I want my boss to come in and give me a sticker. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I do too. But, we got to make everyone seem like they're special, even though they're not really that good. But that's another topic. Hey, so Texas was one stupid run play away from potentially winning that game.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just can't stand Ohio State. I see LeBron's jumping on the bandwagon, and you look in the crowd. These people look. You know how someone looks like they're from Ohio? Like these people look like they're from Ohio. I just cannot stand that team. I want them kicked. I don't know if
I'm losing you, Tony. You're breaking up.
Else, just do our own thing.
Okay, you want it. What did you say? Say that one more time before I let you go. You were cutting out.
I want to kick them out of the Big Ten, and everyone else in the Big Ten do our thing and see how they can survive.
Interesting. I think that might.
I don't like them. I don't like how they do business. I don't like when there was no NIL, how they did business. I just do not like them. I want Wisconsin to get to the next echelon. At least Luke Fickell has no parachute now. He's not going to go back to Ohio State. So he's got to make this happen, or he's going to end up at some kind of MAC program or something again.
All right, he's going to end up back in Cincinnati. Tony, I appreciate it. See, that's why I can't get there about Ohio State. It was like, I hate Ohio State. I'm a Wisconsin fan, okay? And I want Wisconsin to succeed. They are so far away from being what Ohio State is. How am I supposed to feel anger? How am I supposed to get stirred up about that? If they were right there, if they were a play short for beating Ohio State in the Big Ten championship, then yeah, I'd hate them. They're not even close. Like they're not even on my radar. So I wish I could hate Ohio State, and I wish I could come in here today and be like, oh, it should have been Wisconsin, but it shouldn't have been. Wisconsin they don't deserve to be in that class right now. Now, I have a little bit of renewed optimism about Wisconsin as the Big Ten has won another national title, and Penn State was close, and Oregon was right there. And we'll get to that later on in the show. It's separate from kind of what we're talking about now. I really don't have an extra grind with Ohio State. And if I'm the only one and I'm completely missing the mark here, then you can yell at me on the air. That's fine. Maybe you can even get me to change my mind, but I can't get there with the anger and the frustration like Tony and like some of you. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, it's Darnell.
Hey, Darnell, what's going on? Early call today. You off of work? Snow day or something?
No,
What's going on?
No, I'm calling at work. So
good for you. Hell yeah, good for you.
I'm sorry. I mean, you say stuff about, oh, I don't really hate Ohio State, and that just,
I can't right now. I have in the past, like when Wisconsin has been close to them in Big Ten championships or just completely blasted. We've seen both. Well, those years I hated them. They're not even in our world. How can I be bothered to hate them right now?
I mean, in my opinion, I think that the hating of them doesn't end, right? Like I've hated them my whole life because they actually were the one team that stopped them from potentially winning it all in 2007. They were the one of two teams that stopped them from winning it all in 2011. They just barely beat the Badgers in 2017.
That year, I have animosity about that year and the year they were blown out.
And then the Badgers had a 21-7 lead at halftime in 2019 against Ohio State.
They should have blown it.
Well, I know, but see, that's what I'm saying. Where, yes, they're not on the level right now. I'll give you that. But the animosity towards Ohio State, I hate them because there's 4 times in the last 15 years where the Badgers would have either been in, a championship game, BCS, whatever, have you. They would have made the 14 playoff. They would have done all these different things if only they would have beat Ohio State. And several of those games, the ones that I referenced, were ones that were either one score or they had a lead in the third quarter. You know what I mean? So that's I guess that's my big gripe with Ohio State. Now, obviously, they're leaps and bounds ahead of the Badgers, but really, in even the last 5 years, they've been much closer than right now. So
I hate Minnesota and Nebraska and Iowa more. I actually have this weird, I'm kind of jealous of Iowa in a way. They're still playing their brand of football, and I think Wisconsin's lost their brand a little bit. But I completely know what you're saying, and I can understand why people are listening to me like I should hate Ohio State. I just don't right now. I don't have the energy for it. And I'm sorry, Darnell. If they're close again and Wisconsin loses to them, I'll hate them. Oh, I'll be angry. I will be really angry. But right now, I just can't get there.
If you just go back to 2019, they got absolutely their brakes blown off when they had to go to Columbus, right? And then they get out to this 14-point lead, and then just completely crap the bed after that. That still just sits in my mind because I was that was my last year of college, so I was really banking on a college football playoff run there. But
that loss still stings. That loss still stings. The Penn State one does too, because it's just man, they were. I don't remember what the score was in that Penn State game, but they had that game in hand as well, and that pass rush and that defense was so good. So no, I'm with you. I've been angry at Ohio State in the past. I couldn't watch last night. Or I didn't watch last night thinking, it's the team that 6 years ago kept us out of the play. I don't have the energy for it. I have too much. I only have so much hate and anger, and most of it right now currently is getting directed towards teams in the NFL, Craig Counsell and the Cubs, that sort of thing. I only have so much of it to go around. Maybe Brad Underwood in Illinois a little bit in basketball. Let's take another call. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is Thomas in La Crosse.
Hey, Thomas.
Happy day after the national championship Tuesday.
You don't strike me as someone who has a lot of hate in your heart for Ohio State, but I could be wrong. Maybe I misjudge you, Thomas.
No. You actually read me really well. You can read me really well through a phone line. And here's why, Grant. Ohio State, they just were the better team. In my heart, I wanted Notre Dame to win all the way. I mean, I told you a couple times on the phone line earlier leading up to it, right? You remember that? So. Yep. But yeah, just Notre Dame had a great start. I mean, we can all agree on that.
What a
10 plays,
drive.
76
I
yards.
thought with that drive, Thomas, I'm like, well, maybe, control the ball, possess the ball. It's very Packers and Josh Jacobs, right? Take the ball, long drive, go for it on fourth down. We have that drive.
Exactly. But after that, the wheels just fell off in my mind. And once it became like 31-7, what was it, late to mid third quarter, I just shut it off and I was like, Notre Dame doesn't have it. I mean, they made a valiant comeback and rally late fourth quarter when I saw the highlights when I pulled it up early this morning.
Yeah, same.
After waking up out of bed.
Yeah, I thought that game was going to be like 55-7, and then I saw it this morning. I'm like, oh, it got close, kind of. Yeah, we did the exact same thing last
night. Before I have to go back to festival because my mom asked me to get eggs and she didn't put that on the list. Quick shout out to Kirk Herbstreit and his son, who plays on the football team too. I saw some highlights of him getting very emotional. So
yeah, good for
as a dad.
As a dad, are you a father, Thomas?
I'm not. I mean, I hope to be. I mean, I have a dad, and he cares a lot for me. So well. If I were a college football athlete and won the college football playoff national championship, he would be weeping over the rails. So that's all I got for you, Grant. I know we got busy phone lines, so have yourself a great Tuesday and stay warm out there. All right.
Hey, Thomas, stay warm. It's Thomas in La Crosse. Yeah, Kirk Herbstreit, he talked about, like, was his wife diagnosed with breast cancer? He was talking about how he's had a really rough year in Ohio State. A lot of people have a lot of hate towards Kirk Herbstreit, I see on Twitter. And I don't have the energy for that. Maybe he's a little bit of a knob. And he had that comment a couple of weeks ago when the selection committee chose certain teams. And he's like, why are fans so caught up in the results? Which everyone interpreted, I think rightfully so, is, well, Kurt, they play the games for a reason. Wins and losses have to matter. And I agree, but I just can't wake up every morning and be like, oh, I hate that Kirk Herbstreit guy is ruining college football. I don't know. He's a voice on TV. Good for him. Sounds like he had a hard year. He lost his dog. His wife had cancer. I guess it's a bummer. Good for Kirk Herbstreit. That's about all the attention and emotion I can dedicate to that. Let's take another caller too. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Good afternoon, Grant. Tim from Sparta.
Tim from Sparta. Good afternoon. Are you here to tell me that I should hate Ohio State more? That would be my guess.
No.
Oh. Okay.
No. You have to take the old man view of this.
Okay.
You prioritize your hate. You have in-season hate, or I prefer despise. I really don't hate anybody or anything.
Hate's a strong word.
But I despise Ohio State during the season, and then when postseason shows up, I root for every Big Ten team that makes a tournament, that makes a bowl, something like that, because they're part of my conference. So whereas I despise Ohio State, it's okay to root for them. I mean, the only team that I could not root for ever is Illinois, because the fibs are just the fibs. You can't root for a fib.
Sure.
So Illinois is the one exception to that rule. So as long as they're in the Big Ten, I can root for them.
Okay.
One time a year, just one.
Yeah. Bull season's a little bit different. Tim, I'm just having a really difficult time hearing you, so I'm going to let you go a little bit earlier. I know we'll have another chance to talk this week. I think I could even, I was pulling for Illinois in that game against, was it South Carolina? Because Bielema is kind of funny. I take Bielema back at Wisconsin so fast. I know people are mad at him for going to the SEC. That's just kind of a thing that happens in college football when he went to Arkansas. I think Bielema is hilarious. And, he took a couple of Wisconsin's defensive linemen. I'm interested to see if he could take all those guys, Leon Lowry, James Thompson Jr., and actually have elite defensive line. I don't know. I'm going to cheer for Big Ten teams. I'm not going to think that, well, Michigan and Ohio State have won national titles. Can only mean good things for Wisconsin and their chances, because they're just not on the level. But Penn State, their success, or Nebraska's financial success in players that they've been able to pay, I look at teams like that and think, well, Wisconsin's not far off from that. We could talk about that next. There's one more caller on hold, so I know we're really caller heavy this segment, but if I take this call, then I'm clear of the obligations. I feel like no one's left out. It's an important feeling to me. Wisco Sports Show, who's this? Wrap us up this segment.
Hey, Grant, how are you doing?
Cone, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Happy for Ohio State, I guess. You want to know why they were the best team? Follow the money.
Yeah.
Their largest donor, Les Wexner, former associate with Jeffrey Epstein, got tied up in that. So
I think
Ebo.
Ebo brought this up yesterday. He's the Victoria's Secret guy, right?
Correct. Yes. So if Ohio State can sleep at night knowing that their roster was built with some dirty pedophilic money, go ahead.
Yeah.
Good for you, Ohio State. Sorry, I almost confused it with Penn State.
I was going to say, Penn State fans have their own demons to battle. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so it would have been nice to see the Catholics get a victory. We've been, kept down for so long now, but that's okay. The rich billionaires, corporate elitists win this one.
Yeah, I suppose. Not like Catholicism doesn't have their own demons to battle and skeletons in their closet. But, that's just the state of things. You're not still in California, right? You could be boots on the ground in UCLA tonight.
I could be, but no, I was out there for a full week, so it was time to get back to Phoenix. You can only take so much of California before you go a little crazy.
Well, especially with all the smoke, you start to go a little nuts. Do you think I could see Wisconsin's won 6 in a row? I could see this being a loss where it's like, well, they've played so well, so many games in a row. If they win tonight, I'm going to seriously be really impressed. This tonight's win is a huge opportunity. If they lose, I don't think I'm going to crush them. But if they win, I think this could be a huge feather in the cap in maybe a way that USC couldn't have been, or Minnesota, or some of these teams that have made up this winning streak so far.
Yeah, I think UCLA is definitely the better team between USC and UCLA. So definitely could see them dropping one tonight. It is a late tip-off. I'm sure you've seen that 8:30 Central Time on the Peacock Network. Kind of crazy there. But, 7 in a row they've won. They're kind of bound to drop one. It's the Big Ten. They kind of all beat up on each other anyway. So, I'm optimistic going in. I think they're 4-point dogs. So, maybe take the road dog. Kamari McGee, corner 3, Kamari McGee, he's going to be there to play.
Better coach, take the points. I know they're on the road. They've been out in LA for a couple days. Kona, I appreciate it. They were yesterday or the day before administering relief supplies. I saw some pictures and videos. That's pretty cool. And Daniel Freitag, I don't know. I don't know. I've said it 10 different ways, and I feel like people have told me I've said it wrong every time. Was dragging John Blackwell on social media for not really helping, just kind of a supervising role and not carrying boxes or anything, which is kind of funny. He seems to be enjoying his Wisconsin experience, even if he hasn't played nearly as much as I think most expected, and maybe he expected. I don't know. We can talk more Badgers, talk more college football, maybe at 5 o'clock when we reset the show. When we come back, I want to give you a couple thoughts on Ben Johnson becoming official with the Bears last night. We've had about a day to stew on it. I think I've organized my thoughts. I will share them with you next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
From all the feedback I got, they ran a very smooth process in this case. It was Ryan Poles was the point person on it, with Kevin Warren, of course, overseeing him here. Kevin Warren's entire history would tell you he was gonna work with the McCaskies to make sure they got the best and that nothing, money or structure or, moving fast, whatever it was, nothing was going to stop them from getting the guy that they wanted to. So they moved very quickly. Obviously, the Lions lost on Saturday night. Ben Johnson had all kinds of exit meetings and stuff that he was going through yesterday. He did his research. He looked into the teams, but he was in a different mindset than he'd been the past couple of years when he turned down other opportunities here. The Bears made him feel good because you're right. There's certainly, I think, in the media and among fans, there's skepticism about the Bears just based on their history, based on things that people have said and written recently here. But the bottom line is this. If you're a Bears fan, you want them to get the number one target, the guy that they want. Financially and otherwise, the Bears are willing to do what it takes, and now Ben Johnson's come to Chicago.
That's Tom Pelissero on 670 The Score yesterday. And I think I played that cut last night. Just a little bit of an explanation, some facts about how that hire came to pass. Gets us into our next segment. If you're watching on the live stream, you might see the picture. Thanks to Kai Chevytown in Menominee. Less than a minute, right off exit 41, the north side of Menominee. So they're truly a short drive from anywhere in the Eau Claire, Menominee, northwest corner of the state. Highly recommend their service department. It's the best I have ever been to. I've had my car serviced there for a long time. My family, even cars that I didn't get at Kai's. I would recommend you do the same, especially right now when it's so cold and your car needs to be in tip-top shape because you don't want to come out after work and have it be dead or have something go to heck. So make sure your car is in tip-top shape when it's minus 30 first thing in the morning. BYC Kais for the best buys. ChevyTownUSA.com. Super easy to make an appointment to have your car serviced. And it's the same friendly faces. They know you. They know your car. If you've been there once or twice, they're going to greet you and ask you how things are going. Very personal, but also the technology and the size of the dealership allows them to be more than just this little mom and pop shop. They have all the luxuries, let's say, of the biggest dealerships around. So Kai Chevytown, ChevyTownUSA.com. I think I need to defend the Bears for a couple of minutes because I was listening to Cowherd and Middlecoff. It's one of my favorite podcasts. It's a good duo during football season. It's like Simmons and Russillo, except a sport that most people care about with respect to the NBA right now. It's not that I don't care about the NBA, but it's football season. So I was listening to them and just very pessimistic, talking about all the reasons that this hire might not work. And any coaching hire might not work unless it's like Jim Harbaugh with Justin Herbert. We're all pretty sure that was going to work on some level, right? There, every once in a while, every once in a blue moon, maybe once every 5-10 years. It's not often where a coach is hired and it's like, that will work. We know. No doubt that's going to hit. There's very few of those hirings. So if you want to do a podcast or you want to do a TV segment about why Ben Johnson might not work as head coach of the Bears, very doable. It's just kind of odd that the Bears got the number one guy. They ponied up, were aggressive in getting him. And now people are like, well, I don't know, though. It's interesting. So I think I have to defend the Bears for a couple of minutes. I know it seems odd. This was Dan Orlovsky on ESPN earlier, and I cut this audio because I don't get this. I think Orlovsky's really smart. I think this take was manufactured for television. Here's about 50 seconds of Dan Orlovsky on Ben Johnson.
One, hiring a coach is a dice roll. It's a worthy dice roll. But here's the hesitation I have, okay? We don't have a lot of evidence in the NFL, specifically over the last maybe 6 or 7 years, where a team and an organization has a young quarterback and they go chase the offensive-minded head coach and it works. Okay, like we're way too in love with that in the NFL. And that's what gives me a little bit of hesitation on this one. The only one that I could sit here and say we could claim as a victory, a win, a good, is when the Rams went and got Sean McVay for Jared Goff after his rookie season. They also moved on from Jared at some point, okay? Like Mike McDaniel and Tua, we can have the conversation of. Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow, maybe have the conversation of. But the ones that we've seen actually work with some of these young, talented quarterbacks are Sean McDermott and Josh Allen, a Harbaugh and a Lamar Jackson, a CJ Stroud and a D'Amico Ryans, a Dan Quinn and a Jaden Daniels. We actually have a lot more evidence recently of the defensive-minded head coaches it actually working out better for the young quarterback.
I'm just not sure that I buy into some of those examples. They seem very cherry-picked. It's like, well, Zach Taylor, Joe Burrow, has that worked out? I don't know. Well, they went to a Super Bowl. Mike McDaniel and Tua, has that worked out? Well, considering we didn't know if Tua could play, and I think they made the playoffs twice, I think it's worked. The Bears were not a functioning football team last year. So if they go 9-8 and get a wild card, like that's a major success. You know what I mean? And I also just think it's unfair. Well, most of the hirings that have actually worked are, yeah, but people have said that the Bills need to get an offensive mind to go with Josh Allen. People say that Zach Taylor isn't good enough. I just, that didn't make any sense to me. I think that's a TV creation take. I would probably bet against Ben Johnson being a superstar. You'd probably bet against most first-time coaches being a superstar because that's what the odds would tell you to bet, right? Most coaching hires are a coin flip at best. There are exceptions, but especially first-time coaches. They're a coin flip. It's a gamble, right? And it's Chicago. I'm not buying into Chicago ever again. I'm not doing what I did this last year. It's like, I know they're the Bears, but guys, this year it'll be different. I'm never doing that again. No, when they prove that it will be different, then I will start to buy into the idea that they can be different. But after this last year, like, no, I'm not. I'm not going out on any sort of limb for that team ever again when predicting wins and losses. I just don't know what people want from the Bears. You know what I mean? If I was a Bears fan, and I learned last night, oh, sick, we got Ben Johnson. That's awesome. That's the number one available coaching candidate. That's the offensive coordinator du jour to pair with the number one overall pick quarterback that's obviously got talent. It just needs to be harnessed. I'd be so psyched. And to turn on the TV today, as a Bears said, I can't wait to see what the talking heads are going to. Certainly, they're going to praise my team for doing the right thing once. And Dan Orlovsky's like, actually, the defensive head coaches have been better. It's like, are you kidding me? Oh, how could they hire a first-time head coach? Look, He's a first-time head coach. But I just reject the idea flatly that the Bears would be getting praised for hiring Mike McCarthy. If the Bears hired McCarthy, there's no way you're turning Get Up on this morning and the whole panel's like, I know it's not popular, but this was the right hire. No one's saying that. They're getting mocked. And by the way, I thought McCarthy would be a fine hire for the Bears. I think he would have taken that team up a couple of notches. I don't know if they win a Super Bowl, but they're probably not going to win a Super Bowl with most coaches because most teams and most coaches will never win a Super Bowl, right? So if they hire McCarthy, a little old school, but I'd be like, all right, I think that's an adult. That's a good coach. They hire Ben Johnson. Good for the Bears. They got the number one candidate, young offensive mind. It seems like he's going to bring in a good staff. At least he wants to bring in Dennis Allen and Darren Rizzi. If the Bears pay for that, I think that will be an excellent staff, and he'll be set up to succeed as well as you can be set up to succeed in a place like Chicago that has done nothing but lose forever, right? But I don't get some of the criticisms of Chicago. Well, he's a first-time head coach. Okay, well then, did you want him to hire Pete Carroll? Did you want to hire Mike McCarthy? Even if you say, well, they should have hired McCarthy, I don't believe you. Because if they would have hired McCarthy, I think they would have got made fun of for it. So I'm just not really sure what the Bears are supposed to do here in the eyes of the talking heads. On a real football note, I'm interested to see what kind of scheme Ben Johnson builds around Caleb Williams, because there was so much play action around Jared Goff. Dan Orlovsky actually 2 hours ago tweeted this, and I bookmark it because it's a great point. Under Ben Johnson, Detroit led the NFL in play action, 36% of dropbacks, 45% of passing yards. The meat and potatoes of the Lions offense with Jared Goff came using play action. Russell Wilson and Daniel Jones were the only quarterbacks to be worse on play action this season than Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, when using play action, had a QBR of 31. His sack rate was 10% on those reps. NFL average was 5. So he had double the sack rate of the rest of the league on play action. Not a good play action quarterback. And when you look at his skill set, it's not surprising. I'm interested to see what Ben Johnson comes in, because ostensibly the offense should look very different. It's a very different quarterback, Caleb Williams and Jared Goff. If I were Ben Johnson, I would watch a ton of Holmgren with early Favre and Andy Reid with early Mahomes, because these types of coaches, they create offenses, they create plays. But what I've said in the past, and this is my dumb football brain needing to kind of boil it down to just normal human speak, they create environments. They create a play that allows the quarterback to kind of discover what's going on and freelance a little bit. You know, they create guidelines. They create an environment for a quarterback that's a little looser, that likes to move, that likes to freelance a little bit. Ben Johnson is going to have to create some type of, because if he expects Caleb Williams to just get under center and run play action with the frequency that Jared Goff did, even if they can protect him, I still don't think it makes the most of his skill set. I still don't think that's what makes Caleb Williams special. And Ben Johnson has been hired to tap into the specialness of Caleb Williams. So that's like an interesting football thing to watch. I'm not going to sit here and say Ben Johnson can't do it. Instead, I'm going to be optimistic, Bears fans. Look at me, not nitpicking your team at every opportunity that I get, and say, I'm interested to see what he does, because I think it'll be interesting. I think Mike Holmgren and Andy Reid are two excellent examples of how to create an offense around a player like Caleb Williams. Mahomes, who likes to freelance. Favre, like to freelance a little bit. You need enough structure, but not too much. And that's a tough line to walk. Very few coaches have been able to do that and win at a high level, but Holmgren and Reid are two of them. And that would be my starting point. If I was going to watch film of other guys and try to steal things for Caleb Williams, that's where I would start. 3 minutes, we'll wrap up hour number 1 of the Wisco Sports Show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It's the Wisco Sports Show. A couple minutes before we break here at 5 o'clock, we'll get an update from Zach Heilprin. Reset the show a little bit to start hour number 2 and get back into college football. I think there's a little room for optimism for Wisconsin in a way that I wasn't feeling a couple of days ago. So I'll talk about that. You can react again to last night's national championship game for those who have joined us since our opening segment when we were really hot and heavy on Notre Dame and Ohio State and how we're supposed to feel about Ohio State as a Big Ten rival winning a national championship. While we wait for hour number 2 and we listen to Zach's update, excellent opportunity for you to pull out your phone and open Spotify or Apple Music or however you listen to your podcast. Wherever you get your podcasts, I would certainly appreciate it if you subscribe to this one, the one that you're listening to right now. This show gets posted as a podcast after the fact as well. And even if you listen live on the radio every night, even if you have, Grant, I'm a diehard loyal listener, I listen to it live on the radio, no need for the podcast. Okay, well, here's the thing. It helps me quite a bit if people subscribe to the podcast. Like and subscribe. They always say that because that makes my numbers better, which makes me a more valuable asset to my company, helps me grow the show. So I would appreciate that. Even if you're a loyal radio listener, Grant, I wouldn't miss a show. I'm a huge fan. I want to support you, but I would never listen to the pod. No need because I catch it live. Well, you don't need to listen to the podcast. That's actually secondary. That's also nice if you listen to the podcast. That helps me too, but it's really the subscribing of the podcast. That's a big part of it. So if you could do that for me, God, that would be great. Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, the podcasts are everywhere. I don't care where you listen to it. I would just appreciate it if you subscribe. Thank you. That would be a great help to me. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about Ohio State, Notre Dame, national championship, and a little sign of optimism for Wisconsin. I haven't been Mr. Optimistic about Luke Fickell, but you know what? I'll try my darndest. When we come back, more of your texts and phone calls as well. 608-321-1670. Hour 2, more of the Wisco Sports Show coming up next. 2 minutes. No commercials. Don't go anywhere.
You know you got such dark eyes.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Wisconsin has moved up in the latest AP Top 25, fresh off of wins over Ohio State and USC. The Badgers jumped 6 spots to number 18. They've won 7 straight games to get to 15-3 and 5-2 in Big Ten play. They'll finish off their West Coast road trip with a game at UCLA tonight with tip coming at 8:30. Turning to the Bucks, they're at 24-17 on the season, fourth in the East. That comes with a slow start to the season, dealing with illness and injuries to their top players like Chris Middleton, who likes where they're at right now.
Yeah, with the up and down season that we've had so far, I think we'll take it, knowing that, we could be better in a lot of different areas. There's a lot of games I think we dropped that we thought we should have won. But to be 7 games over 500 with, all the highs and lows, I think we'll take it right now. Hopefully, we keep, getting those wins up and getting a higher win percentage.
The Bucks, they're in New Orleans to face the Pelicans tomorrow night, tip at 7 o'clock.
Rural Mutual is the #1 farm insurer in Wisconsin for a good reason. As a company founded by farmers, they understand the ag industry and its challenges. Local agents offer farm families the best advice and personalized coverage. RuralMutual.com to find an agent near you.
Rural Mutual Insurance.
There's at least one Wisconsin player on all 4 conference finalists in the Eagles, Commanders, Bills, and Chiefs. That means a Badger will come home with a Super Bowl ring. Now, speaking of Wisconsin football, they started their winter workouts, which includes half of their incoming freshman class who enrolled early, and also getting ready for spring ball. For the Wisconsin Sports Zone Network, I'm Ebo.
As of this moment in time, Paul Feinbaum, does the Big Ten own college football?
The answer, Greeny, is yes. The Big Ten at the moment owns college football, and there's no way you can say it doesn't. When you go back to back, that's generational. In Ohio State's case, they beat 2 SEC schools along the way. And there's an old saying that was emanated in 1828 when Andrew Jackson was elected president. A senator from New York said, "To the victor belongs the spoils," and that's exactly where the Big Ten is this morning. It's an uncomfortable feeling for the SEC, which has owned the sport, but it's a reality this morning.
We grew, we built, we responded to tough times, and man, isn't that what life's all about? They're going to go down in Ohio State history, one of the greatest teams to ever play at Ohio State. Ohio State may not be for everybody, but it's for these guys, and I'm really proud.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
I have a Packers conversation that I want to start at around 5:30. No Mike Clemens tonight. I'm going to take the week off after a season of long, hard work, and we appreciate Mike. Everyone follow him on Twitter and tweet. Hashtag thank you, Mike, at Mike Clemens NFL. And he'll be on the huddle with Bill tomorrow night. He texted me today, said, "Hey, I'm doing some family stuff tonight." I'm like, Mike, I got it. It is fine. We will survive without. Go talk to your wife. See the sunlight for once in a while, Mike. Take an afternoon off. So plenty of time to get your phone calls in if you have anything to say regarding last night's championship game or something related. I want to bring this to the table. An extension of a conversation that we started on Friday about a huge Packers offseason. And if you're watching on the live stream, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, it's called Ryan Day's Day, which I thought was very clever, big in all capitals, Packers offseason. I kind of think the more that I sit here and stew in this radio studio since the Packers were eliminated by the Eagles, the more I think, I don't know if it's enough. I don't know if the Packers can simply sit idly by and say, well, we have young guys. We'll develop. I hope. But Detroit has some young guys. Chicago has some young guys. Minnesota has some young guys. All these teams are getting better for the most part. There's not some ancient gray-haired, blue-haired team in the division. Like all of these teams, I think, and Kevin O'Connell just signed an extension with the Vikings today, which seemed to me like a foregone conclusion. There was a little drama with that Jay Glazer report. And it's like, well, maybe someone could trade for Kevin O'Connell. It's like, okay, well, the Vikings might be a lot of things, but their owner is not an idiot. So that was never going to be on the table. 608-321-1670. If you have thoughts on the national championship game, wide open phone lines for you to grab. You won't have to wait very long. In a weird way, and I know some Badgers fans might think this is weird. I got some pushback from Tony in Texas and Darnell. I'm kind of a little happy for Ryan Day. Dude's done nothing but come up short the last couple of years, and he's taken it from all directions from his own fan base, which has been warranted. He's 1-4 against Michigan. He hasn't won the Big Ten since 2020. He's the coach of Ohio State. That's not acceptable. So I've seen all these fans, on Twitter. Well, Ohio State fans, how can you celebrate? All of you wanted Ryan Day fired. It's like, yeah, kind of with good reason. He can't beat their rival. It's one of the biggest games in sports. And he hasn't been winning the Big Ten, let alone winning enough college playoff games, college football playoff games, and national championships. But he finally did it last night. And in a weird way, just in a human way, I'm kind of happy for the guy. Good for him. I hope Wisconsin catches up and they beat him next year for the first time in forever. But Wisconsin's not even close to being on the same plane as Ohio State. So how am I supposed to be angry at them? I do feel this weird sense of optimism, at least financially, with Wisconsin and the rest of the Big Ten. Now, Wisconsin, I don't think can reach the level of Ohio State. Not exactly a hot take. And I don't think they can reach the level of Michigan. Michigan had one partial season post Harbaugh where they fell off a little bit. And all of the boosters were like, no. We're going to give millions of dollars to this quarterback from LSU. We're getting after it. But I think the Big Ten, which Wisconsin is a part of, has a lot of reason to be excited. 2 straight national championships. And it would seem that now that everyone's paying players, like this advantage that the SEC has had forever, kind of gone away a little bit. The South has always harbored more talent for the most part. Now Ohio has a lot of talent, and there's talent along New Jersey, Pennsylvania. There's talent in the East and the North too, Big Ten country, but most of it is in the South, and most of it is in Texas. A lot of it's in California. So the SEC has had a geographical advantage for a long time, and they've had the advantage of finding ways to pay these guys under the table. And they're not academically hamstrung the same way that some Big Ten programs are. I'm not going to act like all of them are, but certainly standards in the Big Ten, historically, academically, been higher than standards in the SEC. Well, all of these barriers that have existed for a long time have been broken down a little bit, right? Kirby Smart and Georgia, or now Kalen DeBoer, but previously Saban at Alabama, or Urban Meyer once upon a time at Florida or Miami, like all of these coaches, because traveling, and let me put it this way, right? Communication digitally wasn't as much of a thing 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, right? All of that talent could be kind of harbored down there, and they would find ways to pay these guys. Well, now anyone can pay anybody. And now someone from Ohio State could just email a file to the South and be like, hey, here's a contract to pay you how much money? Yeah, maybe I don't want to be a backup at Bama. Maybe I don't want to be a backup at Georgia. Maybe I don't want to go to Georgia or Bama or Florida at all. Maybe I just want to straight up come to Ohio State instead, right? I see this tweet here from Ross Uglum, who mostly I don't like his tweets, but this is a good one. He's quote tweeting a tweet that's highlighting national championships by division this year. Ohio State in FBS, North Dakota State in FCS, Ferris State in Division II, North Central. Shout out to Jim Ozarski, brought that up on Bill's show earlier today, an alum in Illinois. And in the NAIA, is Grandview in Iowa. I mean, it's the Midwest, right? Now that everyone's paying, now that money is changing hands in the wide open, like the playing field has been leveled a little bit, and that's evidenced by what's happened in like LSU all of a sudden doesn't have the same level of talent. Alabama all of a sudden doesn't have the same level of talent. Georgia has a lot of talent, not as deep. They're too deep, doesn't overwhelm you like it used to, because all of the backups or all of that extra talent that Kirby had just been hoarding is now elsewhere, right? That playing field has been leveled quite a bit. Now, Texas has the money. I think, was it Darnell or Thomas or maybe Tony in Texas said earlier, just follow the money. That's where you'll find it. Yeah, Ohio State's got the most expensive roster in history. Oregon with what they're doing, right? Penn State, a lot of money too. Cowherd made this point on his podcast, and I don't know how accurate it is, but damn if it wasn't interesting to listen to. All of these Big Ten schools, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Wisconsin, like these schools have uber successful graduates all over the country, in California and in high-level business. Shout out Eric Hovde, right? Penn State's got a lot of graduates in the big cities on the Eastern Seaboard. Like these schools, people come from all around the country to go to these schools, high-level academic institutions with high levels of success. I mean, look at, isn't it Ishbia And then the owner of the Cavs, whose name escapes me, they're both Michigan State guys. Right? Some of the richest people in the country who now own professional sports teams, right? These types of people come from the Big Ten. You go to school in the Big Ten. These are people who have a very high standard. And I think you even see this on some level in the WEAC. You see it more at some schools than at others. And I'm not trying to be a homer for my school, UW La Crosse. There's a certain way people carry each other. There's an expectation. Yeah, maybe not all of us are going to get straight A's, but we're not completely going to just sleep and drink our way through all of the classes. We're going to party. We're going to have a good time. But you know what? Like, the school stuff actually matters to a reasonable degree. And we expect our sports teams to be good. We expect there to be a certain level of excellence. You even see it at some schools in the WIAC, let alone in the Big Ten, right? I just think with the graduates and the people at high level of business that go to these schools and that, leave then to go to Florida, California, Texas, right? These global business centers that maybe don't exist in the same way, at least in Madison or Milwaukee. Some do, right? There are Wisconsin grads all over the place. Uber successful Wisconsin grads. And this morning I was thinking about Vagabond John's gripe that he's had for weeks that for the most part, I haven't dismissed. I just haven't put it at the top of my priority list to talk about, right? I don't know that Wisconsin's that organized in a way that some of these other schools are. Why can Nebraska out fundraise Wisconsin? Why? Someone needs to explain that to me. Are you telling me that Nebraska has richer alums than Wisconsin, or more successful alums than Wisconsin, or higher academic and athletic standards than Wisconsin? That doesn't track. Or even Penn State. Penn State might have more graduates that go to New York City and maybe, but like Wisconsin shouldn't be miles behind Penn State. I think all of these schools will be behind Ohio State, and all of these schools will be behind Michigan to a degree, at least if this last year of fundraising has shown us anything about Michigan, it's that they were not going to, man, maybe we won't win national championships every year like it felt like at the end, or be in the mix for national championships like it felt at the end of the year with Harbaugh at the end of his tenure, but we're not just going to sit idly by and go a couple games over 500. Like, no, we're going to throw a ton of money at this problem. Big Ten's got a lot of money. And I do wonder, in the case of Wisconsin, like, how do you plan to mobilize and to activate countless high-level graduates all over the country who've gone on to make mountains of money and high levels of business? Like, how are you going to tap into that money? Because other Big Ten schools have figured out ways to do it. And I don't expect Wisconsin to be on the level with Ohio State or with Michigan. But what's the reason they should be miles behind Penn State? What's the reason that they should be miles behind Nebraska? And maybe Iowa. I don't know. I just don't have a good gauge on Iowa. They're still so old-fashioned. I still don't even know what to make about Iowa. But let's use Nebraska and Penn State as comparisons. Like, why with Wisconsin, their alumni base and their level of perceived excellence, right? There's just a cut above in the Big Ten compared to some other conferences and some other schools. Like, what? Why is Wisconsin miles behind and seemingly in I don't know. I don't want to say in the dark, but it just seems like they're not even playing in that arena. And I could be wrong. I know the varsity collective exists. I just don't get a sense that countless people are being activated and motivated to throw money at this issue, which is what it's going to take. That's what the issue is going to require. I don't know. I just don't see the reason. Ohio State and Michigan are two separate beasts, but Michigan State, Penn State, Nebraska, someone's going to need to explain that to me. I feel like Wisconsin has a little bit more untapped potential. It's untapped. It's not being tapped currently. If you have a thought on this or on the national championship game last night, we'll talk about it for a couple more minutes before taking our break. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is Louie in Eau Claire.
What's going on, Louie?
Hey, I've had the same frustrations. It's just like you can't really think of a reason why Wisconsin can't be as competitive as some of these other big schools. But the SGC's got that tagline. It just means more, and that's been kind of lampooned and used as a Twitter hashtag and that sort of thing. But at some Big Ten schools, it just kind of seems to matter more. And if you remember when, at the height of COVID there, when Kevin Warden was the commissioner, and they said, wow, we're just going to cancel the season. And I think 4 teams, this was before the Pac-12 teams came over, 4 teams said, like hell we are. We're going to go play somewhere. We'll go play we'll go play. We'll find somebody to play. And I think it was Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State and Nebraska.
Yep.
And then all the other teams, including Wisconsin, just were fine with kind of canceling the season. I'm not making a statement about COVID and all that. I know it was a serious deal, but right then I thought it just means more to these other schools. There's people in leadership, both at the university academic level and athletic level, that aren't willing to be jerks, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
They really are still kind of thinking that this is academic based and that these really are student athletes. These other programs, I don't think, have that mentality. There's not, I think, one person in the state of Ohio who cares if their stud wide receiver goes to class or not. They're looking for them for 3 tutties and go for 150 on
Do you care?
on Saturday.
Do you care if that's the case in Wisconsin?
No, not really. As long as these people aren't, committing crimes, I don't really have a problem with the kids not going to school.
Yeah. I mean, they're on some level, they're going to go to school on some level. I appreciate it, Louis. I don't know that they're all going to go on to be astronauts, but they're going to go to school on some level. At least fake school is school, right? Adjusted learning for athletes and their busy schedule, especially now with the expanded Big Ten and more travel time, especially for basketball. Like Mick Cronin complaining about how UCLA's got to go all the way to the East Coast. Wisconsin's been in Los Angeles the last couple of days, right? They were there USC on Saturday, and they've been doing some volunteering and stuff, which is cool. Playing some outings, do some things as a team. Don't just sit around in a hotel with your thumb up your butt. Mike commented on the live stream, which is a funny joke that made me laugh a little. Mike, I don't think this is accurate. He said, I don't think Wisconsin grads are business starters and entrepreneurs. They're mostly college professors and professional activists. Not quite. Funny joke. And we can, poo-poo liberal Dane County and, I understand. I know the joke you're making. Wisconsin's got plenty of professional heft. Maybe not on the level of Michigan. And I don't think they're going to be able to fundraise on the level of Ohio State just because it doesn't matter like it matters to Ohio State. And that's fine. But Nebraska and Penn State? I don't know. Michigan State? I maybe Louis was onto something in the case that these people involved with the varsity collective and around the program need to get in people's faces and look, this needs to matter to you. We need to get people involved and activated. Right. And I just don't know. And especially some of that, we've had these conversations with Vagabond John. I just don't know if that's happening on the level that it's happening in other programs. 608-321-1670. One more call and then we'll take a break. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, Clemhead Mike.
Clemhead. Hey, what's going on?
Thanks for reading my post.
Yeah, of course.
I was a couple of things. Ryan Day, he's got the poor man hasn't slept in 2 years. Poor guy, he's got bags over his eyes. I mean, just man.
Yeah, I don't know that there's ever been someone more relieved with a win than he was last night.
Yeah, I know. And you and I were both rooting for the Golden Domers. I know. I concur with some of the other callers that college sports has become kind of a professional sport.
Oh yeah,
minor league level, and we're going to have to see old guys like me. Been watching college sports on and off since the late '60s. College sports used to be, you went to school, you got a great education, and it was all paid for. And like my son, he paid for his loans up till he's in his late 30s. You got a free education. You got your own dorms. You got your own cafeteria. You got free medical care.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're going to have a salary cap in college. And old guys. I mean, I watched Notre Dame's games this year in the playoffs. That's it. That's the only college football I watched all year. And I think a lot of older fans like me are getting turned off by the sport. And I've talked to guys here on the live stream like Rick and other people like that. We're not interested anymore.
Yeah. So I think for some it's a turnoff, and it's a turnoff on some level to me too. It's just the way that it is now. So if you want to fold up shop and say, well, I miss when college football was when an education was enough. And look, I think that education and what these schools used to offer just with scholarships to players, I think it's become incredibly undervalued. It's just, it's just not the way the world works anymore. So we could sit here and complain about it. And then that's fun. I love complaining, Clemhead Mike. But if Wisconsin's going to actually compete and be good, it is exactly like you said, it's professional sports.
Yeah. Well, my nephew went to a trade school and he's making well over 6 figures a year now. And he knows people that went to college at the same time as him, and they're not they're professional baristas and, things like that. So
Yeah.
there's,
and of course, look, there's, how many tens of thousands of people to graduate from these Big Ten schools. Yeah. Some of them go on to be, I don't know, just normal working Americans. I'm not saying they're all billionaires. There's plenty of people from the Big Ten, out in the professional world who've gone on to make a lot of money at a really, really high level. And I don't think Wisconsin's activated and recruited and motivated those people enough. And maybe they don't care, but on some level, it's got to be Wisconsin. I mean, there are people working at the university. It's their job to make those people care financially and to get them involved. Let's take a break. 3 minutes. We'll be right back.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I think it's one of the great comeback stories in college football recent history. The comeback, I mean, 4 weeks ago or on November 20, end of November, this team was flat. And one of the great 4-game stretches in college football history. Yeah. I can't wait. There will be a book written about that. And I know we talked about it pregame. What in the world was said in the team meeting? Because that's one of the best college football teams I've ever witnessed.
Urban Meyer. Sounds like you maybe a little drinky poo. Just a little. It's probably a very long day of broadcasting and a long game. I tuned it out in the third quarter. Shout out to Thomas Lacrosse called in. Yeah, I thought it was over, and it was over. I know Notre Dame had a nice little flurry, but I saw what I needed to see. Yeah, Ohio State has more talent, more firepower, more weaponry, and that was very apparent in the first half. I watched a little bit of the third quarter. just to make sure. 608-321-1670. Corey from Marshall texts in. Says, you're spot on, Grant. My take as a UW alum is that the folks who have the capital ability are more interested in getting their names in buildings on campus versus giving to the athletic department. Yeah, I don't know. My take, and this is a very loose, I don't want to say uneducated take because I don't think I'm really going out on a limb here, is you go anywhere around the country, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Houston, Dallas, somewhere down in Florida, you will find UW grads who have gone on to succeed at a very, very high level in lots of different industries. And that's true of just about every school in the Big Ten. Because in the Big Ten, my point was you can even feel this on some level at different WEAC schools too. There's just a different level of, maybe I'm not going to be the smartest human being in the world. And maybe I'm not going to get straight A's, but there's a certain level of expected, excellence or success. Right. And I don't know that Wisconsin has done the best possible job activating those people in ways that Nebraska has obviously done. Penn State, I get Michigan and Ohio State because not only are those schools huge and they have lots of successful alumni, but football is the thing. It's a big thing at Wisconsin. I think it needs to be drummed up to be even a bigger thing. I think there needs to be people in, I don't know. I think there needs to be people at UW who are doing a better job reaching those people and getting them to support. And if they get, if they just get a little baseline level of success with Luke Fickell, that will be easier to achieve, I think, because success begets more success. Donations beget more donations. It just feels like this Fickell thing hasn't got off the ground yet. It hasn't even started moving in the right direction. And we're 2 full seasons in. I don't know. Sorry, I have an itchy nose. And it's really bothering me, and I can't continue the show until I really get it. There, I got it. I was not picking my nose. I was rubbing the outside, by the way. I only pick my nose over commercial breaks when the camera's turned off. 608-321-1670 if you have a thought on any of this. I want to talk about the Packers in just a couple minutes at 5:30. I'm happy for Ryan Day on a human level. I roll my eyes a little bit at some of this analysis, some of this commentary. This is Kirk Herbstreit if you missed this at the beginning of the show.
I'm a little emotional. I'm just fired up for these guys. It's when I call these games, I'm incredibly objective, and I love all these Ohio State teams, but this team, because of what they went through to get to this point, you're just happy,
I'm looking at the board of Microsoft because Rick commented on the live stream, isn't one of the higher ups at Microsoft a UW alum? And I'm just amazed that you can go find these people and read their bio after what happened to the United Healthcare CEO. But I'm looking at Emma Walmsley, who's one of the board members at Microsoft. Some of these bios are just outrageous. Walmsley was appointed the Dame Commander of the British Empire for services to the pharmaceutical industry and business in 2020. She holds an MA in Classics and Modern Languages from Oxford University. Walmsley joined the Microsoft board as an independent director in 2019. Now, that is an interesting thing to have on your resume. Appointed Dame Commander of the British Empire for services to the pharmaceutical industry. There's a big backstory to that I want to know more about. There is a guy, Satya Nadella, who's on the Microsoft board. He's their chairman and chief executive officer. Has a degree from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Not UW, but UWM. Degree in computer science from UWM and a master's degree in business admin from the University of Chicago. Maybe this is my issue. Maybe this is why I haven't reached extravagant levels of wealth, is I only have one degree. Maybe I need multiple. And how do I get appointed by the British Empire for services to the pharmaceutical? I know nothing about pharmaceuticals. Maybe that will be my next degree that I pursue. Maybe in Oxford. Can even pick that out on a map. Let's talk Packers. I think we've hit everything we need to hit regarding college football and the Badgers and the national championship game. When we come back, is this the offseason the Packers need to really whip it out and make a massive move? The longer I sit here after they got eliminated to the Eagles last weekend, I'm starting to think yes, and I'll explain next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
And I'm assuming you're talking about a player, like a veteran player, right? Yeah. When you trade a high pick for a veteran player, you're trading a young, really good contract for a player who's proven, but probably expensive. So you're giving up a pick in salary cap space. So I think you gotta weigh that. And if it's the right player, if you feel he can be a dynamic player that can change your football team, I think you got to consider that because there's not many of those guys out there. But I think you have to also understand what you're giving up, and so that's kind of my fault. We haven't really, I'm trying to think how many times we've done that around here, so yeah. I mean, there was one back in from Favre, right? I mean, they traded a first round pick for him, right? I'm trying to think if there's. I'm drawing a blank, but I'm trying to think if we've traded any first round picks since I've been here for a player. Again, but it doesn't happen a lot at all. But we've gotten some first round picks for players. But yeah, I mean, certainly if that player can impact our football team in a significant way, you have to consider that.
That's Brian Gutekunst last week. I play that because that's what I want to talk about, the idea that the Packers could trade some picks and add a star player. Who have they gotten first-round picks for? I mean, you get one for Rodgers, right? It didn't end up being a first because he didn't play the requisite number of snaps. Who's he talking about? And Marcus Davenport doesn't count. That was a trade that you made in the draft. You didn't trade away a player that fetched a first-round pick. You traded away a pick that fetched a first. Semantics, I suppose, but that comment from Goody is like, well, we've gotten first-round picks for play. Yeah, Marcus Davenport doesn't count, at least not to me. Not in the way that he's presenting it. He's presenting it like, oh, we've had a Max Crosby-level player, a Myles Garrett-level player, a T. Higgins-level player. We've traded him for first-round picks. Is there someone I'm forgetting? And how could I forget that person? Just talking about Goody's tenure. Maybe they did under Thompson, but I don't remember an instance of that under Thompson either. My memory doesn't go all the way back to 2005, crystal clear. And I don't remember what the Favre trade was for. The way that he mentions it's like, yeah, in recent, I mean, we've gotten first round picks for players. I don't know what he's talking about. So I want to talk about the idea that the Packers could trade a high level pick or a package of picks to go get a star player. And if you have thoughts on this, please 608-321-1670. As we talked about on Friday, Max Crosby is the guy that I'm looking at because I don't think Myles Garrett is going to leave Cleveland. T. Higgins does not move the needle for me. I think if the Packers are going to do this thing and they're going to go on a Super Bowl run, they're going to have to do so by and large with the group of weapons that they have. Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs, Tucker Kraft. Those guys are going to have to take a big leap in year 3. That's baked into the math already. Those guys need to take a much bigger step from year 2 to year 3 than they took from year 1 to year 2. Okay. I also think they'll draft a player to come in and take the spot of Christian Watson because he's probably not going to be available at all next year. And I am not using Watson's availability or skill set in the equation of how to build this team into a contender moving forward. I just don't think you can. Just like you can't use Jair Alexander's availability and skill set in the equation. You just have to act like you're going to get nothing from that player. I think they're going to cut Jair or figure out a way. I think they're going to part ways somehow. And even if they bring him back at a cheaper number, I'm still not expecting him to stay healthy because we have no recent precedent to believe that that's going to happen, right? Same with Watson, who's going to miss a ton of time now with an ACL and it's a significant knee injury. So they're going to add to wide receiver, but the bulk of the production and high-level play from that group is going to have to come from the guys who are already on the team making a nice leap from year 2 to year 3, and I expect that. Maybe we're out a little bit over our skis from year 1 to year 2. I also don't know that the scheme did them many favors, okay? I thought Matt LaFleur had a bad year. I've made that abundantly clear over the last 3 weeks, going all the way back to the Bears game, even before they were eliminated by the Eagles. We've talked about that. I think it's a defensive player, and I think it's Max Crosby because I don't think Myles Garrett is springing loose. And, we could talk about another high-level player. I just don't know who that player is. I think it's Max Crosby. New GM, new coach. Everybody's gone. Everybody's gone from the Raiders. All of his teammates, all of his high-level. It's just he's got to go into work in Vegas, and he talked about this last week. And maybe I can pull up the audio for those of you who missed Friday's show. Just give me a sec. I'll stall while I talk to go get it. He's got to come into work and be like, this isn't the team that I've come to know over the years. This doesn't feel like my team anymore. This doesn't feel like the team that drafted me. This doesn't feel like where I'm supposed to be anymore. We're bringing in a new coach. And I saw today that the headlines coming out of Las Vegas were mostly built around Pete Carroll. It's like, okay, well, how is that? I just don't know, especially without a quarterback. How is that going to move the needle? The division's got Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Justin Herbert, Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, and Bo Nix. I don't think Bo Nix is unbelievable, but it's not like there's a vacuum at quarterback. You have 3 teams with, if not elite quarterbacks, very good quarterbacks or quarterback situations, and 3 Hall of Fame level coaches. Like, what's the path forward there in Vegas? This is Max Crosby from Good Morning Football last Friday. If you heard Friday's show when I was at Bills, I played this, but I'll play it for you again today, seeing we're talking about it.
Tell us about where you are with your rehab, what time in the timeline, and then if you can, tell us where you are mentally with the state of you and the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, the rehab's been going incredible. It'll be about a 4 to 4.5 month deal till I'm fully healthy and cleared. So that's going incredible. I'm already lifting, rehabbing, in the building every day, getting after it. So I'll be walking next week. I've been rolling around here on a scooter. It's definitely been an adjustment, but yeah, it's just part of the process. So I'm doing incredible on that end. So yeah, I'm feeling really good about it and where we're at. But yeah, future of the Raiders, obviously, I think everybody kind of knows what's going on. I mean, like I said, I'm there every morning. We just talked about it, and it's very eerie around there, I would say. A lot of new changes and things like that. Obviously with Coach AP, getting fired and Telesco as well. First off, I want to shout out to those guys. They were incredible, to me during my time there. But yeah, for me, I'm just focused on the day to day. A lot of things are out of my control. You know what I mean? I'm gonna sit back and wait and see what happens. But I'm just focused on my rehab right now, and we'll take it one step at a time.
I just think they need a big swing. I understand that they got a lot of young talent and the salary cap's in a good spot, and they feel like, this team is in the oven and it's baking and it's progressing really nicely. I just don't know with what Detroit has built and what Minnesota has going on. Chicago, I think, has a real coach now. I don't know what that will manifest. But even if the NFC North takes a step back next year, got to play Lamar Jackson, got to play Joe Burrow, got to play the Steelers. Like, there's legit quarterbacks on the schedule next year in a way that Packers didn't really have to deal with this last year. I just think that this Packers team, Brian Gutekunst and his, let's say, lieutenants at Lambeau Field at 1265 in Green Bay, they need to sit down and have a lot of meetings. Like, guys, I know this isn't something that we typically do, but when the time is right, the time is right. And if you look back through history, I brought this up on Friday. I mentioned this to Bill earlier today. Like, the Packers won a Super Bowl in the 90s after adding Reggie White. They won a Super Bowl in 2010 after adding Charles Woodson. They should have made a Super Bowl in 2014. And for the purposes of this conversation, I'll just say they basically did make a Super Bowl in 2014 after they added Julius Peppers. I just think if there was ever a time to do this and ever a player to target, it would be now, and it would be Max Crosby. You already have Josh Jacobs on your team. You have Keyshawn Nixon. You have Rich Bisaccia. Get those guys to get in the ear of Max Crosby and see if he can't shake loose, and see if he won't go quietly to the office, to the front office of the Raiders, and be like, "Look, you guys, this isn't even a team right now. You have a tight end, and what else? You know what I mean? Like, I got 3 years left, 3 elite years left, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. I'm on my third head coach in 3 years. I've been playing for interims. 3 different quarterbacks. Like, what? Come on. You know what I mean? I just think if there was ever a time to do this thing, and I don't think you can sit idly by and say, well, we like Lucas Van Ness. I hope so. You took him 15th overall. But I don't know. Instead of sitting around and waiting for the stars to align, I think sometimes you need to try to align them yourself a little bit more than the Packers had. And if you got to give up a first, let's say they give up a first 1 year, a second the next, see if you can't get a third in return. I think Goody, honestly, based on that comment, let's listen to it one more time. He's focused more on the financial impact of having a first or a second round pick. Because you go through their history of first round picks in the last 10 years. I know they've been picking towards the later parts of the first round. I'm aware. But even when they've had bad years and they've picked high, it's like Rashawn Gary. Okay, good. Not game-breaking championship-winning player. Jair Alexander, good player. Can't stay healthy. I understand that the finances get tricky. And it's tough to lose a player on a rookie contract for a couple of years. So Devontae Wyatt's cheap. Is he going to help you win a championship? Brian Gutekunst said last week, it's about time to compete for a championship. Okay. well, then maybe you need to do some things that you haven't been willing to do. It's not like it's historically unprecedented. Go look at their last 3 or 4 Super Bowl winning or Super Bowl level teams. There's a player on each one of those teams where it's like the perfect ad at the perfect time. This is Goody. One more time. Listen to this.
And I'm assuming you're talking about a player, like a veteran player. Right. Yeah. When you trade a high pick for a veteran player, you're trading a young, really good contract for a player who's proven, but probably expensive, so you're giving up a pick in salary cap space. So I think you gotta weigh that, and if it's the right player, if you feel he can be a dynamic player that can change your football team, I think you got to consider that, because there's not many of those guys out there. But I think you have to also understand what you're giving up, and so that's kind of my fault. We haven't really, I'm trying to think how many times we've done that around here, so yeah. I mean, there was one back in Favre, right? I mean, they traded a first-round pick for him, right? I'm trying to think if there's. I'm drawing a blank, but I'm trying to think if we've traded any first-round picks since I've been here for a player, Again, but it doesn't happen a lot at all. But we've gotten some first-round picks for players, But yeah, I mean, certainly if that player can impact our football team in a significant way, you have to consider that.
I don't know. It seems like the time, and Max Crosby seems like the guy. Just seems like the move. It seems like the thing to do. I just don't think the Packers can slow bake this with how good their division is. Jaden Daniels might be the one truly elite quarterback in the NFC right now. Jalen Hurts he's riding in the back of the bus with the Eagles. Stafford is on his way out. Dak I think Goff is fine. Last weekend showed that he can be had. We don't know what McCarthy is. Caleb Williams might be great, but I'm just not going to assume that the Bears are ever going to get figured out until they do. If there was ever a time, I just feel like it's now. And I can just picture in my mind Max Crosby wearing green and gold. And I can just see it on the Super Bowl program. I can imagine telling my kids about it years down the road where it's like, yep, we knew when they acquired Max Crosby. I don't know. I'm being a fan. I'm putting my stock, my share aside for a moment and just talking like a fan. One final segment if you want to get in. Lots of open phone lines. You won't have to wait. 608-321-1670. We'll wrap it up next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
You know, you get a difference maker, everybody gets better on the defense. So that's the whole thing. Yeah, they could do it any of those ways. I mean, it's really hard to do in one draft, and you got to, to get that help immediately. Now, the Rams did it this year, right, with Verse and Fisk. I mean, those are two really good pass rushers. So it can be done. And if the Packers could draft two guys like that, I mean, man, they're in business, but that's pretty tough to pull off, too. I argued this week, I did a column, and I argued, look, I'm not big on, going out and all these trades, people go trade for this guy, trade for that, that stuff just doesn't work. But I think if Max Crosby is available, I would take a really hard run at that if I were the Packers. He's still just young enough. He's 27, so he turns 28 in August. He's just young enough where I think it would be realistic to think they could get 3 very good years out of him. And so I talked to a personnel guy in the league. He thought a 1 this year and a 2 next year might get it done. Maybe they'd have to flip-flop some other picks to the Raiders' advantage too. But if that were the price, man, I would have a hard time not doing it if I were the Packers. There's a risk there, but I would have a hard time not doing it.
That's not Pete Bukowski. That's not some internet slap. Some hot take radio gas bag. That's Pete Doherty. And I remember that audio. I was digging for it during the last commercial break, and I couldn't find it in time. But I figured, all right, I have one more 3-minute break. I think I remember on Friday. That was at 11:30. He was on with Bill. That's Pete Doherty, who's as stoic and reasonable as any Packers guest we have on our network. Saying, look, I don't often do this, but man, it might just be perfect. And I, between Friday's show and tonight, have really talked myself into the idea that Max Crosby is possible and that he is the missing link and exactly what this team needs to keep pace the rest of the division in the conference and maybe just get over the top in a huge playoff game. I'm setting myself up for major disappointment. Couple calls here. Got a couple minutes left before the end of the show. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Eric on I-90.
Eric on I-90. Good evening, Eric.
Good evening. Say, did you see that Packer crock pot I sent you on Facebook?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
I thought you'd like that.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And thank you.
Are you
for
gonna
that.
buy it?
Probably not. We're all crocked up. We got 2 of them, and I'm told that's 1 too many. And I'm not getting rid of mine, so someone in the household is gonna have to make a tough decision.
Did you show it to Miss Wisco and say, what do you think?
No, I
No,
didn't.
you
I can tonight, Eric. I didn't know that was the expectation.
You didn't. You're all crocked up. And I thought you got shut down. I thought you wanted it. She shut you down.
No, there you go.
That happened. Well, you convinced yourself that this is the way to go. This guy's not even a free agent, though, is he?
Nope. Nope, not at all.
Well, yeah, that's a good plan, then. I think anytime you're going for something that's unavailable, it's a good plan. I do it all the time. I just took my snowmobiles in for a preseason check, and there's no snow.
No,
None.
that thing ain't getting used.
It sounds like a perfect plan.
You should take it to New Orleans. You have plenty of snow down there right now.
Right. Yeah. So, no, it sounds like, everybody needs something to hang their hat on, and I think you're giving it to them. I do.
And Eric, all of a sudden the phone lines are jammed and I want to get to everybody. I know he's not a free agent. I think a sneaky, respectful front office like the Packers making some calls, getting Josh Jacobs to recruit. I think it's possible. I think it's weirdly more possible the fact that he's not a free agent. But this is, again, me being a fan. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Mike in Eau Claire.
What's going on, Mike? What do you think?
The first thought in my head when Josh Jacobs mentioned that after the game, I was like, get Max Crosby instantly.
Mm-hmm.
And our draft pick, the way we use our draft picks, we can sell them. So get rid of a first and a second. We're not as talented. They need to admit that they're not as talented as some other teams at drafting.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that and have a good night, brother.
Yeah, you as well. I appreciate it. They're not bad drafters. They get fine players. Fine players don't win Super Bowls. And Crosby, God, that dude's a stud. One more call. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Ridge Runner Mark, sir.
Ridge Runner. Good evening.
So here's my take. I agree with what you're saying, but here I'm going to put on Goody's shoes here and explain if it doesn't happen. This is why it happened. Well, we really like the players we have, and it's the second year of this defensive scheme, and we think we're going to see some uptick in production from the players we have, and we feel pretty good about the scouting we've done with the draft. We think we might be able to find somebody, and we feel really confident with the players we have, and that's why we didn't go ahead and go for this trade. I think that's, if it doesn't happen, that's going to be the narrative. Hey, it's the second year of this defense. We're going to see an uptick in production, and we feel good about this draft class. We're going to find some diamonds in the rough, and we'll make it. We feel confident in our coaching. That's going to be the speak if they don't go out and get, regardless of who the free agent is, or if you don't go for a home run, they go for a mid tier. I think that's what we're going to see.
I got enough mid. I don't need to add another mid to the mid mix. We got plenty of mid already, and the mid we have is accounted for on the pay stub or cheap on a rookie deal. I don't need more mid.
I hear you. But yeah, that was the first thing I thought of when you went all in on this Max Crosby thing. I'm like, well, if it doesn't happen, that's going to be the narrative. That's going to be how they spin it.
Will you buy it if they spin it that way?
No, I mean, it's because it would really be frustrating because they have the money now. They're out from underneath Rodgers. The only cap hit they would take is if they cut loose from Jair Alexander. And I don't think they're going to do that either. So I don't know. It'd be awesome if they got Max Crosby, but there might be somebody else that they grab that they really, really believe in that might do a similar job, and we'll be just as happy with that. I mean, who heard of Xavier McKinney before they brought him in?
Well, okay, I see your point. Yeah. I think more people than you probably would think, but I see your point. If there's a way that they can get a here's the thing. A rotational guy to fit in the system. Sometimes you just need a dude who's going to blow up a play and make it happen at the most important time. And I don't think they've really had that guy. This is probably prime Clay Matthews. And I don't think you can do that by committee. I don't think you can do that I think you need a guy. We can talk more about this tomorrow. We're out of time. Congratulations, CeCe Sabathia. Hall of Famer, by the way. We can talk more about that tomorrow as well. Have an excellent night. Enjoy the Badger game. Greg Gargage. I will stay up until the end. I'll post it. Watch for it.